Mixtropy. Logic, principle of mixtropy. Mixtropy would be a principle of constructive logic, which tells us that in every structure or event, the knowledge and measurement of any of its components should be adjusted by the knowledge and measurement of the other components of the structure using appropriate formulas and processes. An example of this could be the adjustment and measurement of any parameter of geometric figures by using measurements and formulas for the other parameters of said figures. And of course, in all physical, chemical, climatic processes, events of all kinds, etc. And I point out and explain this property or general principle of constructive logic here, since there are currently some procedures, theorems, principles, adjustments of geometric parameters, etc., that are accepted as valid, but they are contrary to this principle of logic, which is mixtropy. For example, the erroneous uncertainty principle, which tells us that it is impossible to know, for example, the momentum, or mass, or velocity, and the position of a particle at the same time. And that is false, because to determine or adjust a particle's momentum, we do so where it is, but not elsewhere. If we measure mass, we do so where it is, but not elsewhere. If we measure velocity, we do so by knowing the different situations in time, etc. In other words, the uncertainty principle is completely false, but they shove it down our throat by proposing dialectical tricks and inaccurate examples, as professional tricksters do. And if not, let them tell us how they obtain the exact momentum, or mass, of a particle without knowing its location, or its velocity if we haven't taken its different situations in time as a reference. For example, and using their mental example. His postulates, we cannot measure the momentum and position of particle A at the same time, because if we send a photon toward the particle, it will influence it and deflect it, thereby influencing its momentum. Of course, but the premise was, at the same time, but not, if later, or bit later, or some little. The same thing happens with the number pi, which they try to approximate with series that don't contain the only known parameter, which is the ratio of the circumference to its diameter, that is, the value 2. This adjustment is made using the power and roots of this value 2, and produces the quadrant pi that I explain in other works and on the website. Of course, there must be many adjustments and conclusions that don't involve this property of mixtropy, and I understand that they are erroneous for this very reason. But, friends, my intention for the moment is to propose this property or principle of mixtropy, so that it can be considered, evaluated, and applied in the future. The figure shows how any parameter can be obtained by formula, adjustment, or function of the others. However, with elements completely unrelated to the event, it is not feasible to accurately obtain the desired parameter. Therefore, mixtropy will be a property and resulting consequence when structuring, comparing, evaluating, and measuring the influence of each of the elements of a set, and therefore, the set as a whole. Thank you very much, friends.